Morning, Madison Avenue. Thank you, Elder Parker, Dad, for having me as a small part of your program today. I was asked to speak to my journey from Baltimore to Los Angeles and kind of how I became involved in entertainment and the entertainment space. And I definitely want to start by saying there's truly no roadmap or set of steps you have to take to get involved, as there's an incredible amount of opportunities out there, not even just in Los Angeles. New York, now Atlanta has plenty of production opportunities. Canada, I mean, there's so many spaces, but I can speak to myself and my journey so far. And it all honestly started at the church, where to me, I feel like I kind of had that first sense of community, which is so important, especially when you do move to, if you do pursue Los Angeles. It's very lonely when you first get there because there's no one there to tell you and guide you to exactly what you're supposed to be doing to kind of break into this business. I was lucky to have had some distant relatives that lived in Los Angeles that offered their home to me. That, the first 2 weeks that I was there, where I'd go door to door with resumes and just try to get an entry level job so that I could afford an apartment with myself and my roommate at the time, and then start to pursue these opportunities in entertainment. And my first opportunity was as an internship. I was an unpaid intern working for a company called Zucker Productions. The heads of the production company were, two former producers, kind of prolific in the comedy space, that really, taught me how to be an assistant in the space. So it was everything responsibility wise, from being on their phone calls and tracking their notes and being able to just kind of learn the language that folks in the industry speak when it comes to deal making or developing scripts or just the writing process. And I know, up until that point, I had no set goal on what I wanted to achieve in this business, other than knowing that I kind of have grown up being a class clown my whole life. And, comedy was something I naturally gravitated towards. And when I saw the opportunity for writing, I knew I was, better at taking essay tests than memorizing a bunch of, information that I didn't feel would be pertinent to what I wanted to, chase. But I love storytelling, and writing was just that natural fit. And that internship essentially showed me all aspects of the business, from scripts that would come into our offices and I would read it, and then you give what they call coverage, which is essentially notes and telling, the production heads how you felt about the script, if the characters were great, if the story was great, and if it merited existing as being made, turning it into a movie or a show. I mean, it was very cool being a part of that creative process. I spent a year at the internship, and they essentially said, we're not paying you, so you should go out and find an assistant job, either within a talent agency or a network, if you can get one of those jobs. And I was lucky to I had one mentor from my high school that was a former graduate that had gone out to Los Angeles to produce. And he got me on this email mailing list that essentially had every job listing from assistant to receptionist to phone call roller, like all just different types of opportunities that would kind of get my foot in the door for what I wanted to chase after. And I was lucky enough to land at the TBS network, which, for a long time was just known for running reruns of Friends and Frasier. But when I got there, they started to make original programming. So I was on a team that essentially was fielding scripts from writers all over, and was a part of the decision-making process and production process of getting these shows, up and running. And I was lucky enough to work on a show with Tracy Morgan and Jordan Peele, as his first television program coming off of his sketch show called The Last OG. And that was my first experience in a writer's room, which is ultimately where, years ago, the first kind of step towards becoming a full-time writer is to break into those writers' rooms. And I was what they called a writer's assistant, where all of the full-time staffed writers are sitting around the table. They're telling stories and jokes and coming up with episode ideas. And it was my job to sit there and type fast and track everything they're saying so that when it came time to put these episodes together, they wouldn't have missed a story they told. No jokes were missed. Like, it's really, you got to pay attention in the room, and it really just tracking. The job was to track. And if you're lucky enough to succeed in that role, a lot of times in those writers' rooms, they'll bump you up to a writer. If, they also, as an aside, in all of these experiences you have in this business or others, I'm always preaching that the best way to kind of advance yourself in a career is to be a great hang, be someone that everyone wants to be around and spend. A lot of times in these rooms, it's 12, 13-hour days, wants to spend that time around you, because you'll get hired for your personality over the specific skill set you have, because you can teach anyone to write, what I write, and to track things, and there's probably 100 better typers than me in the world. But if you can kind of hone your interpersonal skills and work well with everyone, and exercise patience in everything you do, you'll go as far as you want to go with what you're doing. I was able to navigate into other writers' rooms, and since then I've kind of been hopping around from show to show, serving as a writer, producer on different projects, and it's really just me following my love of storytelling. I have a lot of friends that are entertainers and comedians, and one of them was beginning to tour and brought me along to help produce this live show. And it speaks to that other willingness to be open to other opportunities that truly just take you being around and exposing yourself to see as a possibility. And one of my biggest regrets, I'd say, as a youth, especially in the church, was I never really pursued aspects of this business while I was still in Baltimore. I worked for the Maryland Film Festival that I don't think exists anymore, and did some volunteer work. But I strongly encourage reaching out locally if you have family in New York, or can get to Atlanta, and just really apply to programs that, even if they aren't specific to what you definitely want to do, you shouldn't know exactly what you want to do at this age, but just like do everything you can, and talk to everyone, and everyone's willing to, this is very much a team sport, I like to say, that everyone kind of raises each other up, and there's no, as personal as a journey as it will feel at times, everyone wants to see you succeed. Everyone in that room wants to see you succeed. My father, Elder Parker in there, always jokes with me that I am his retirement plan. And if the timing is correct, he's retiring in the next 2 months. So I need to speed up everything that I'm doing out here if any of this was worth it. So I'm going to go ahead and work on that, and leave you with, lastly, I'd say just be open to opportunities all around the entertainment space, and not just the one that you think is the only thing that interests you, because there's so many times where you'll get to know people that are in the lighting teams and the production teams that are doing everything to make sure that this show or film gets off the ground, and it may interest you. And there's some of the best people I know, and definitely the hardest working people I know. So just stay open-minded with all of this. If it is writing that you think is something that you want to pursue, my advice there is to read everything. I did not go to a school that taught me how to write. I very much imitated a lot of my favorite, filmmakers and writers, and the way that they spoke and the way that they wrote, and tried to kind of channel my own perspective through that, lens of structure they showed me for here's how you tell a story that isn't all over the place. And just the practice of, constantly reading and writing and understanding how stories move and work was crucial to my development. And, I'm still developing. I'm still trying to figure out how to get, my first kind of things off the ground that are my own, and not, servicing the vision of someone else's, which is just as fun and fulfilling. But I am, I'd love to tell my Baltimore story sometime, and I'll figure that out. But in the meantime, thank you for having me, and again, the church and my father has my information. Feel free to reach out whenever. Happy to impart any wisdom that I can, even though I heard Rachel's on this program. So please take anything that I said with a grain of salt and listen to everything she said, because she's the mayor of Baltimore. And I think that's it. Thank you for having me, and have a great rest of your day.